There's a lot of back and forth when it comes to how women dress, but if there's one thing that the history of dress codes has taught us is that a woman's body is political, no matter how benign her closet is. Some, of course, would be quick to disagree. Who cares if a girl in high school can't wear a top with straps? Is it really that big of a deal if a woman gets sent home for showing up to the office without heels? Institutions have a right to dictate how they want their members to represent them, and some will even chime in and say they like dress codes, or just prefer to dress modestly in general. And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with tapping into a traditionally feminine aesthetic and rocking it for all it's worth. If you want to wear pink taffeta dresses and trail perfume down the hallways, do it. The problem comes in when you don't want to. Remember, just a few short decades ago women weren't allowed to wear pants while in Congress, the 90s, and even their presence in marathons spurred men to shoulder check them to teach them their place. So while dress codes can seem innocent enough, the extra policing that women often experience when it comes to their uniforms signals at something a little more. It's not only about controlling how the person looks, but also how society sees the person. Below is the history of dress codes, and how they defined the women of their time, whether they liked it or not. Ancient Rome, the rise of Stolas Giorgio Kosalich / Getty Images News / Getty Images. To the untrained eye, a quick glance at an ancient Roman mural might show that men and women alike wore pretty much the same outfits. However, the truth is that the way you draped fabrics in ancient Rome meant different things to different people. According to Drive. Alison Keith, a professor and the acting chair of the Department of Classics at the University of Toronto, women never really wore the toga unless they were in the working class, and that included a very specific type of woman. Indeed, under the Empire, working girls, i.e. prostitutes, were supposedly required to wear the toga. But the authorities were really only policing the dress of upper-class women, and women with pretensions, I suppose, Dr. Keith explains to Bustle. If you were a respectable woman, what you wore instead was a stola, a long tunic, and it was for a very interesting reason. I think this was mostly so that you could tell at a glance who was respectable, and so who couldn't be assaulted, and who wasn't, and so could be. Dr. Keith shares. Augustus was very interested in marking the dignity of the upper classes, and not letting them be subject to insult on the street. As a signifier of married feminine virtue, it was supposed to ensure the inviolability of respectable citizen wives. One wouldn't want to insult a man by coming onto his wife in public, and a woman didn't want her dignity violated or purity questioned, so the stola helped to keep the order. Ancient Greece. Mandatory modest clothing. Stuart Franklin / Getty Images Sports / Getty Images. Greek women from the Hellenistic Greek kingdom also experienced a similar level of policing, up to the point where there were actual appointed male magistrates called controllers of women, who were elected to make sure women didn't spend too much on clothing, looked appropriately chaste and sober in public, and made sure the right outfits were worn during festivals. While it might sound extreme to have a religious cop of sorts standing on town corners and confirming women were dressed modestly enough, it's interesting to note the way some men thought back in 100 AD. It has a lot to do why dress codes are placed on women in the first place. At this time, many women veiled, meaning they covered their faces with their veils. But as the Greek writer Plutarch pointed out in his essay Moralia, men will do whatever they can in order to peep at women, and it's up to the ladies to shoulder the brunt of their male actions and hide from their efforts. We cannot forbear prying into sedans and coaches or gazing at the windows or peeping under the balconies where women are, he claims. Which doesn't sound too far away from present day's version of what am I supposed to do if your cleavage is right there. It's not a new way of thinking. Middle Ages, plain garments. Albrecht Dürer. During the Middle Ages, dress codes weren't thought up inside parliament chambers or assembly floors. Rather, they were divinely handed down, straight from God down to his medieval followers. As far as medieval Christians were concerned, the existing social hierarchy was divinely mandated. If God made you a lord living in a castle, your clothing should reflect that. The same applied if you were the wife of a wealthy town merchant or a leper. The more elaborate your clothing was, the more powerful a social status you were claiming. Yvonne Seal, assistant professor of medieval history at SUNY Geneseo, shares in an in